Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Well, I'm sorry. For your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep the science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got those cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
By the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining here with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I asked merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, champagne is rarely the first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself up to present. I've only been married once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I am much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it's not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really. If the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
The country.
What on earth do you do there?
Well, when one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are these people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours. Neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Eh? Shropshire? Oh, yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all right, but I'm quite certain that Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
Well, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I'm in love with Gwendolen. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. Then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce courts were specially invented for persons whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Oh, there's no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't eat the cucumber sandwiches. They are made specially for Aunt Augusta.
But you've been eating them all the time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. How's some bread and butter? The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And a very good bread and butter it is, too.
Well, my dear fellow, you need not eat as if you were going to eat at all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
That is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth, and accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors that one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What What do you mean, Algy by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Bring that cigarette case Mr. Worthing looked in the smoking room the last time you dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say that you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you'd let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There's no use offering a reward now that the thing is found.
I must say, that is rather mean of you, Ernest. However, it makes no matter. Well, now that I look at the inscription inside, I find the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you've no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. I say, it's a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Yes, but it's absurd of you to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of the fact. And I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should speak of in private. I simply want my cigarette case.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt.
Yes, charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algy.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. Surely that doesn't matter that an aunt ought to be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt ought to be exactly like your aunt. It's absurd. Just give it back to me.
But why does she call you her dear uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why not, no matter her size may be, she call her own nephew her uncle? I can't make out! Besides, your name isn't Jack at all, it is Ernest.
It isn't Earnest. It's Jack.
You've always told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I've ever seen in my life. It is perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing B. for the Albany. I'll keep this as proof that your name is Ernest if you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but this does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily calls you her dear uncle. Come on, old boy. You had much better have out with the thing at once.
My dear Algy, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It's very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on, tell me the whole thing.
Well,
I may mention that I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there's nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as uncle from motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country, under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That's nothing to you, dear boy. You're not going to be invited. Besides, I can tell you candidly, the place is not in Shropshire.
I have suspected that, my dear fellow. I have Bunburied all over Shropshire on the tombs of the buildings. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. But, as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I've always pretended to have a younger brother, the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You should leave that to people who haven't been in university. They do it so well in the daily papers. But you really are as a Bunburyist. I was right in saying you were a Bunburyist. You were the most advanced Bunburyist I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented for yourself a very useful younger brother called Earnest, in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down to the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I've really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. It's absurdly careless of you about how you send out invitations. It's very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
Oh, I have no intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I am treated as a member of the family, and either sent down with no woman at all, or two. In the third place, I know perfectly well whom she will place me next to. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband from across the dinner table. That is not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It is washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, naturally I want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in either case. Cecily has grown a little too much interested in him. It's rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Ernest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury.
What?
A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
Oh, if I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, she's the only girl I ever saw in my life I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is the theory that corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and the happy English home has proved in half the time.
Oh, for heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about.
Well?
That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I can get her out of the way for 10 minutes so that you have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
Yes, I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not so serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Raphael and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you're behaving very well.
I'm feeling rather well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I'm always smart, am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for development, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry for a little late, dear Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I'd not been to visit her since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looked quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, England?
Thanks, Mama. I'm
Good heavens! Lane, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for any money.
That'll do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumber sandwiches. Not even for ready money.
Oh, it really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It has certainly changed its colour, from what cause I, of course, cannot say. I've quite a treat for you tonight, dear Algernon. I'm sending you down with Mary Faulkner. She's such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I will have to give up the opportunity of dining with you tonight after all.
Oh, I hope not, Algernon. I will put my table completely out. Your poor uncle will have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, need I say, even in greater disappointment. But the fact is, I have just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I think, Algernon, it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your uncle, but he never seems to take much notice as far as his own ailment goes. I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me if he would try to refrain from any relapse before Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season, when everyone has said practically whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. And I think I can promise he'll be all right by Saturday. However, the music is another great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, then people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, then people don't talk. But I'll run over the program I've drawn out, and if you'll kindly follow me into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It's very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful with a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think that they're improper and look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe it is certain. Gwendolyn, you will accompany us.
Certainly, Mama.
Charming day it's been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else,
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
and I should like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mama has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact, and I often wish that, in public at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. Well, the fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I'm told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Oh, darling. But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is. But supposing it were something else, do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation. Like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Personally, darling, I don't much care about the name of Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibration.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I think there are other, much nicer names. For instance, I think Jack, a charming name.
Jack? No. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get baptized at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There isn't a moment to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and, well, you led me to believe, Mrs. Fairfax, that you were not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity, and, to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to say quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn, darling.
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
Well, you know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it. I am afraid you have very little experience in how to propose.
But my own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They're quite blue. I hope that you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mama, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished? What, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come upon a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she would be allowed to arrange for herself. And now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I'm making my inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, though I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am prepared to enter your name should your answers be what a rarely affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes. I must admit I smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
Oh, very good age to be married at. I have always been of opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell?
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. Why, the whole theory of modern education was radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it might prove a serious danger to the upper classes and lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and it
Prevents one from keeping it up.
That's all that can be said about land.
I have a country house with some land, of course, attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't depend on that for any of my real income. No. As far as I can make out, the poachers are the only ones that make anything out of it.
A country house. How many bedrooms?
Let's see, upstairs.
Oh, well, that can be cleared up afterwards. You do have a townhouse, I hope? A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Yes. Well, I own a house on Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to the Lady Bloxham. I can, however, get it back at any time I like at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham. I don't know her.
Oh, she goes out very little. She is a lady quite advanced in years.
Nowadays, that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
What do you mean, the fashion or the side?
Both, presumably, if necessary. What are your politics?
Oh, I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us, or come in the evening at any rate. And now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I've lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? Oh, he was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The truth is, Lady Bracknell, I said I'd lost my parents, but it would be nearer to the truth to say that, well, my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
Yes. The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did the charitable gentleman with the first-class ticket to the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag.
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was in a handbag. A rather large, black leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
The cloakroom in Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
Yes. The Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess, I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion. Has probably been used for that purpose before now, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask you then, what would you advise me to do? I need hardly say that I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to find, at any rate, one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
But I don't see how I could possibly do that. I can produce the handbag at any time. It's in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worth.
Good morning. Algy! For goodness sake, don't play that wretched tune! How idiotic you are!
Didn't go all right, old boy. You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you? I know it is a way she has. She's always refusing people. I consider it most ill-natured of her.
Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. As far as she's concerned, we're engaged. Her mother is perfectly horrible. Never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm sure that Lady Bracknell is one. At any rate, she's a monster without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algy. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own aunt that way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the remotest knowledge of how to live, nor the smallest inkling of how to die.
That is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I don't want to argue about it. You always want to argue about things.
That is what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that way, I'd shoot myself.
By the way, have you told Gwendolyn?
You don't suppose that there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased. Quite as true as anything in civilized life should
I
be.
am sick to death of cleverness. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people these days. It's become an absolute public nuisance. Wish we had a few fools left.
We have.
Well, I should very much like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? About the clever people, of course.
What fools.
By the way, have you told Gwendolyn yet about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain.
That is nonsense.
What of your brother, and what of the profligate Ernest?
Oh, by the end of the week I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy, quite suddenly. Lots of people die quite suddenly of apoplexy, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. You had much better say a severe chill?
And you're sure that a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of the kind?
Of course it isn't.
Oh, well, very well then. To my poor brother Ernest, to be carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That's rid of him.
But I thought that you said Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your brother Ernest. Won't you feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that's all right. Cecily isn't a silly, romantic girl, I'm pleased to say. She has a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would very much like to see Cecily.
I shall take very good care you never do. She is excessively pretty and only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
One doesn't simply blurt these things out to people. Gwendolyn and Cecily are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I bet you anything you like that a half an hour after they've met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they have called each other a lot of other things first. Now, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we'll have to go and dress. Do you know it is nearly 7?
Oh, it always is nearly 7.
Well, what shall we do afterwards? Go to a theater?
No, I loathe listening.
Well, we might go to a club.
Oh no, I can't stand talking.
Well, we might trot round to the Empire at 10.
Oh no, I can't bear looking at things, it's so silly.
Well, what shall we do then?
Nothing.
It's awfully hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind hard work when there is no definite object involved of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular I need to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You are not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mama's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had over Mama, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Gwendolyn, darling.
Oh, the story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mama, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
Oh, the Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. It, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn around now.
Thanks, I've turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
Oh, may I see you to your carriage, my own one?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
Glass of sherry, Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunbury.
Yes, sir.
You can put up all my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow is going to be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane! You're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There is a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I ever cared about in all my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm anxious about poor Bunbury, that is all.
If you're not careful, your friend Bunbury's going to get you into quite some scrapes someday.
I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
That is nonsense, Algy. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation as watering flowers is rather Merriman's duty than yours, especially when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray turn to page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday afternoon. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he's leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious I think he can ought to be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one with a higher sense of duty or responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish he would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometime. We might have a good influence over him. I'm sure you certainly would. You know German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I would produce any effect on one who, by his own brother's admission, his character is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I'm not sure that I would desire to reclaim him. I'm not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. Don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, dear Cecily, is the diary we all carry with us.
Yes, I know, but it chronicles things that have not happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novels, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism?
How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so. But it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript was unfortunately abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasco coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a surprise.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her very much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not said anything about a headache.
Yes, I know, Miss Prism, but I felt instinctively that you had one. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you are not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes, he usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one who saw Amy's enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria, Doctor, my name is Letitia.
A classical allusion merely, drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear Doctor, I will take a stroll with you after all. I find I have a headache and the walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism. With pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. I find it somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Poor political economy. Poor German. Poor military history.
Mr. Earnest Worthing has driven over from the station. He's brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Earnest Worthing, B4, the Albany West. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss, he seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He's anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Earnest Worthing to come here, and you can talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he'll look just like everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are in some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. And you, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother. My cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
I am not really wicked, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think I'm wicked.
If not, then you've been deceiving us all in a very excusable manner. I hope you've not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the business appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement, if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you'd better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He's gone up to buy outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He's got no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the accounts I receive of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission if you don't mind, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
That's because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Wouldn't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I'd never have any appetite without a buttonhole first.
A Marshall meal?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
The Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are snares.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Well, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A woman-thrope never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept, as well as the practice of the primitive church, was distinctly against matrimony.
That is precisely the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. You must realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, you present yourself as a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I've been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can be depended upon. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor came from fruits. But well, where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing?
This is indeed a surprise. We didn't expect you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Your brother Earnest, dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I do hope he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you were always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Earnest. He had many faults, but this is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel in Paris.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
Has a man sow, so let him reap.
But charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Will the internment take place here?
No. He seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly speaks to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would, no doubt, wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna and the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyous or, as in the present case, distressing. I have preached it at harvest festivals, christenings, confirmations, days of humiliation, and festal days. The last time I delivered it was at the cathedral as a charity sermon for the Society for the Prevention of Discontent among the Upper Orders. The bishop who was present was much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
Yes. That reminds me. You mentioned christenings, I think. I suppose you know how to christen, all right? I mean, of course, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant in whom you're interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
Those who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for any child, dear Doctor. No, I'm very fond of children, but I would like to be christened myself this afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know if the thing would bother you in any way, or if you think I'm a little too old now.
Oh, not at all. The sprinkling, or indeed the immersion of adults, is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehension. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed I think advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour would you wish the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot round about 5, if that would suit you.
Perfectly. Perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that occurred recently in one of the outlying cottages of your own estate. Poor Jenkins the carter, a most hard-working man.
Oh, I don't think it'd be much fun to be christened with other babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably. Admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg of you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm so pleased to see you back! What clothes have you got on? Do go and change them.
Cecily!
My child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do you look happy? You look as if you had a toothache, and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
What?
Your brother, Ernest. He rapped about half an hour ago.
What nonsense! I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we'd all been resigned to his loss, his sudden reappearance seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room? I don't know what it all means. I think it perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Brother John, I have come down from town to tell you that I am very sorry for any trouble I have caused you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think it's coming down here disgraceful, and he knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There's some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me all about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often. Surely there must be much good in one who's kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury! Well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit that all the faults were on my side. However, I must say, Brother John's coldness to me is peculiarly painful. I was expecting a much more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering this is the first time I have ever come here.
Uncle Jack, if you do not shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me.
Never, never, never.
Well, it is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. Now that the task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
Let us not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
Algie! Oh, you young scoundrel! You have to get out of this place at once. I don't allow any bunburying here.
I put Mr. Ernest's things in the room next to your own, sir. I suppose that is all right.
What?
Yes, Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I've unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage.
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
Merriman, fetch the dog cart. I'm afraid that Mr. Earnest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I haven't been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the slightest.
Oh, I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to speak of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It is perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who is actually staying with you for a whole week in your house as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You are certainly not staying with me for a whole week as a guest or anything else. You've got to leave by the 4:05 train.
I certainly won't leave you as long as you were in mourning. It would be most unkind of me. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I would consider it most unfriendly if you did not.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you are not too long. I never saw anybody take so long to dress, and with such little result.
That is better than always being overdressed as you are.
If I'm occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by always being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden absurd. However, you've got to catch the 4:05, and I hope you will have a pleasant journey back to town. This bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. However, I must see her before I go and arrange for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
No. He's going to send me away.
Then we have got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people from whom one has known a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with great equanimity. But even a momentary separation from anyone from whom one was just introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman. For 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope I shall not offend you, Cecily, if I state quite openly and frankly, you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. I hope when it appears in volume form, you will order a copy. But please, Ernest, continue. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love thee wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense now, does it?
Cecily.
Sir, the dog cart is waiting.
Tell her to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed to know you're staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anybody in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Oh, you silly boy, of course. Well, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months.
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how exactly do we become engaged?
Well, since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course, any man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. And when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I decided to end the matter one way or the other. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name, and this little bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I give you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse always given you for leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which you keep all your dear letters.
My letters. But my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
I know that, Ernest. I remember only 2 hours forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecily.
Oh no, they'd make you far too conceited. The 3 you had written me after I'd broken off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can read the entry if you like. Today, I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather continues charming.
But why did you break it off? Cecily, I'm very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off. What had I done? I had done nothing at all. Why did you do it? Particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would have hardly been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are.
You dear romantic boy. I like your hair. I hope it curls naturally.
Yes, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again?
I don't think I could now that I've actually met you. And of course there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You mustn't laugh at me, darling. It has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone of the name of Earnest. There's something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
Yes, of course. But suppose my name was some other name.
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my own sweet, loving little darling. I can't see any reason why you should object to the name of Algernon. It is not at all a bad name. In fact, it's a rather aristocratic name. Half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name was Algie, do you mean to tell me you couldn't love me?
Ernest respects you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I'm afraid I would not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly practiced in all the rites and ceremonies of the church.
Of course. Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him on the most important christening. On the most important business.
Oh.
I shan't be away for more than half an hour.
Well, considering we've been engaged since February the 14th, and I'm meeting you today for the first time, I think it's rather hard for you to leave me for such a period as half an hour. Could you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must write his proposal in my diary.
Miss Fairfax has called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask Lily to come here. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the many good elderly women associated with Uncle Jack and some of his philanthropic work. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think you're so forward of him.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say.
How nice of you to like me so much after such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favorable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I am glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man, and certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So, do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced age resides here also?
Oh no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prison, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, it is strange you never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I have liked you ever since I met you, but I am bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I can't help expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you appear to be and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly.
Pray do. I think that whenever anyone has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He's the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influences of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history provides us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed history would be quite unreadable.
Pardon me, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes,
Well, it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you've lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
There is no reason why I should keep a secret of it, Tedious Gwendolyn. All of the county newspapers are sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you are under some strange mistake, dear Gwendolyn. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolyn, if it has caused you any mental or physical anguish. But since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I should consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gone into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time to wear the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call a spade.
Well, I am glad to say that I have never even seen. It is obvious our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From on top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town?
Quite a well-kept garden, this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to live in the country. If anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I hear the aristocracy is suffering just greatly at it, just at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I'm told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Testable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen in the best of houses nowadays.
And that's Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there is no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It is quite obvious that I'm trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest! My own Ernest!
Darling,
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
to darling little Cecily, of course not. What could have put such an idea in that pretty little head of yours?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there was some mistake, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is presently round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack!
Here is
Oh.
Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean, to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea in that pretty little head of yours?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief?
Oh!
Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is John. It's been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wrong
You will always call me sister, won't you?
There is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would be like to permit Bridget to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It's the first time in my life I've ever been reduced to such a painful position, but I really am quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly, I have no brother. I've never had a brother, and nor do I ever have the slightest intention of ever having a brother in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are such cowards, aren't they?
This ghastly state of affairs is what you call Bunburying, I suppose.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is. The most wonderful Bunbury I have ever been on in my life.
You have no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
That is absurd. One has a right to Bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist, good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunburying. But I know that you're serious about having not the remotest idea about everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algy.
Very good thing, too. Your brother is looking a little off color, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to come up to town as often as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing, either.
As for your conduct toward Miss Cardew, I think you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. Say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defense at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn is all. I love her.
Well, I wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Carter.
I don't think there was much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax ever being united.
I don't see how that's any business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How you can sit there calmly eating muffins when we're in this terrible trouble I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get in my cuffs. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
I say it's quite heartless you eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I'm in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I'm eating because I'm unhappy. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, there is no reason why you should eat them all in that greedy way.
I wish you would have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens! I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you have just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was heartless of you eating muffins under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Stop! Stop it! Algy! I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't ask me to go without having some dinner first. It's absurd. No one goes without having their dinner first. Except vegetarians.
Vegetarians! Give it back!
Besides, I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Earnest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up on that nonsense, the better. I also made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:30, and I naturally would take the name of Earnest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be christened Earnest. It's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence I've ever been christened by anybody. I think it extremely probable I never was, and so does Dr. Chasuble. Entirely different in your case. You've been christened already.
Yes, but I've not been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. But if you ever having doubted your ever having been christened, I should think it very dangerous your venturing upon it now. You can hardly have forgotten how someone very closely connected to you was very nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill.
But you said that a severe chill wasn't hereditary, or anything of the kind.
It used to be, I know. But I dare say, science is always making wonderful improvements.
Ah! That is nonsense. You're always talking nonsense.
Jack, you were at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left.
Algy!
I have told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
Algernon, I've asked you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet, and there's still 1 muffin left.
The fact that they did not follow us at once into the house as anyone else would have done seems to me to show they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got to cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery!
They're approaching. That's straightforward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, there's just one thing I would like to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, can you answer me the following question? Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't, but that doesn't affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. that you would have the opportunity for coming to town to see me as often as possible.
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not the moment for German skepticism. Their explanations seem to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute frugality.
So, do you think we should forgive them? True. I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time for me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names, is that all? What we're going to be christened this afternoon?
For my sake, you're prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. Where matters of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage. We women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens!
Winterland, what does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small claim, I followed at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. But you will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
Gwendolen and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards Algernon. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
Oh, no, Bunbury doesn't reside here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did he die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Though I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Oh, Bunbury? He was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
I mean to say, Aunt Augusta, that poor Bunbury was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, that is what I mean, so Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinions of his physician. I am glad, however, that he came to some decision at the last and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we are finally rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, Who is this young person whose hand my nephew Algernon seems to be holding in what is to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That young lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Algernon and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know if there is anything peculiarly exciting about the air in this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seems to me to be beyond the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. Some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew in any way connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was a Thames.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Southwest, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire, North Britain.
That is not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have no strange errors in that publication.
You will be pleased to know that Miss Cardew's solicitors are Messieurs Markby, and
Markby and Markby, a firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I'm told one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. You will be pleased to know that I have also in my possession certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, confirmation, registration, vaccination, and the measles, both the German and English variety.
Ah, crowded with incident, I see, although perhaps a little too exciting for a young girl. I'm not myself in favor of premature experiences. Gwendolen, the time has come for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh. Only about £150,000 in the funds. That is all. Good day, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £150,000 in the funds. Miss Cardew seems a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. Few girls in the present day have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come here, child. Pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature might have left it. But that is easily altered. A thoroughly experienced bridge maid produces a really marvelous effect in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lansing, and after 3 months, her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Turn round, child. No, the side view is what I want. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points in our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends upon how the chin is worn. They are worn very high just at present. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world. And I don't care tuppence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Come here. Of course you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. But I am not in favor of mercenary marriages. Why, when I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune at all. But I never thought for a moment of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
You may kiss me, Cecily.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may call me Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Ooh, I think the marriage had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I am not in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of getting to know each other before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but I'm afraid that this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian. She cannot marry until she comes of age without my consent. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
May I ask upon what grounds? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say an ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more can one desire?
It pains me to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, about your nephew. Truth is, I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible! He is an Oxonian.
I'm afraid there can be no doubt about the matter. This morning, during my temporary absence in London on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my home under the false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name, he drank, I've just been informed by Merriman, an entire pint bottle of my Pierre Jouet, Brut, 89, wine I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin. What made his conduct all the more heartless is, he knew very well from the first that I have no brother, that I've never had a brother, and that I have no intention of ever having a brother, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him so myself, yesterday afternoon.
After careful consideration, Mr. Worley, I have decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct.
Well, that is very kind of you, Lady Bracknell, but I'm afraid my own decision is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Child, come here. How old are you, dear?
I'm nearly only 18, but I admit to 20 at evening parties.
You are perfectly right in making some slight alteration. No woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitted to 20 at dinner parties. Well, it will not be all that long before you're of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. Therefore, I do not believe that your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
Pray excuse me for interrupting you again, Lady Bracknell, but I feel it is only fair to tell you that, according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not legally come of age until she is 35.
Well, that does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is filled with women of the very highest birth who have, of their own free choice, remained 35 for years. Lady Dunbarton is an instance in point. To my own knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which was many years ago now. So, I believe our dear Cecily might be even more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt instinctively. But I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I like punctuality in others. And waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Monfort.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to me to show a certain amount of impatience, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. As soon as you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will most gladly allow your boy to form an alliance with my ward.
You must know that what you propose is out of the question.
Well, then I'm afraid a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny that I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear. We have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
Christening, sir? Is not that somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be most displeased if he learned that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand, then, there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that, as things are now, they would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I shall return to the church at once. Indeed, I've just been informed by the pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I'm on my way to join her.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment. The matter may be one that is of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has for the last 3 years been Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
Yes.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I've been waiting for you there for nearly an hour and 3/4.
Prism! Where? Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator containing a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing alone in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained a manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism! Where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mentioned, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me an old but somewhat capacious handbag in which I'd intended to place a work of fiction I'd written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction for which I've never been able to forgive myself, I placed the manuscript and the bassinet and the baby in the handbag.
But where? Where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I demand to know where you deposited the handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria. The Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, you will wait for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not suspect, Dr. Choswell. I need hardly tell you that in families of higher position, strange coincidences are not supposed to happen. They're hardly considered a thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
These noises are very unpleasant. It sounds as if he was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It has stopped now.
I wish you would arrive at some conclusion.
This suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism! Is this the handbag? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It does appear to be my bag. Here is an injury it received from the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. And here on the lining is a stain from the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred at Leamington, and oh, here on the lock are my initials. I'd forgotten I'd had them placed there in an extravagant mood. This is undoubtedly my handbag. It's been such an inconvenience being without it all these years. It's a wonderful surprise to have it returned to me.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes! Mother!
Oh, Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried!
Unmarried. I do not deny that it is a serious blow. But after all, who has the right to cast stones against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you!
Oh, Mr. Worthing, there has been some error. This is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
The answer I have to give you may not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently Algernon's elder brother.
Alger's older brother? Then I have a brother after all! I always said I had a brother, I knew it! I knew I had a brother! How could you have ever doubted that I had a brother? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn Darling, my unfortunate brother. Mike, Amanda, Betsy, Scott! That's right! President Dever! President Dever, this is my unfortunate brother, Algernon! Algernon, you scoundrel. You shall have to treat me with more respect in the future. You've never behaved like a brother to me a day in your life.
Well, my dear boy, I do say I was out of practice.
But what are you? What is your Christian name now that you've become someone else?
Good heavens! I'd quite forgotten that part. Your decision on the subject of my name is quite irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affection.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then the matter had better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta. At the time that Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished upon you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I had been christened. What name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot, at the present moment, recall what the general's Christian name was. But I have no doubt that he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but that was only in later years, and that was the result of the Indian climate and marriage and indigestion and things of that kind.
Algy, can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we were not even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
But his name would appear on the army lists of the period, would they not, Aunt Augusta?
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But his name would appear in any military directory.
The army lists of the last 40 years are here! These delightful records should have been my constant study. M. Generals. Oh, thank you. Madam, Maxwell, Magley, ugh, what ghastly names they have. Migby, Marksby, Mobbs, Moncrief, Lieutenant, 1840. Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, General, 1869. Christian names, Earnest John! Gwendolyn, didn't I always say my name was Earnest? Well, it is Earnest. I mean, it naturally is Earnest.
I remember now that the general was called Earnest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
My own Ernest. I felt from the first you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, what a terrible thing it is for a man to discover that all his life he's been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
Of course I can, for I feel you are sure to change.
My own one!
Letitia.
Frederick, at last!
Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last!
Oh, my nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, for the first time in my life, I realized the vital importance of being earnest.